Biden not doing everything that he could have done because he is ideologically a centrist and really doesn't support the progressive agenda? You know, I interviewed Branko Marcetic, who wrote the book, The Case Against Joe Biden. It's called Yesterday's Man, The Case Against Joe Biden. And it was a 90-minute interview because we covered his entire 50 years in politics. And with the exception of 1972, when everybody was progressive, when he first ran for Senate, he's been a centrist and a moderate, as we all know, for years. And his famed bipartisanship was really getting Democrats to vote for Republican proposals rather than vice versa. So he became, progressive just because of the mood of the nation right now and because of certain advisors that he's put in. And I did a show with Zach Carter about his economic team and Matt Stoller about his antitrust team. He's got some really good people in there. We can't say that Joe Biden hasn't done anything good since he's been president, but did he not push for this agenda because he is ideologically centrist or because he's not playing with a full deck? Clearly,
I think it's both.
I think it's both.
Yeah.
I don't think he really wants it to be passed, and
nothing will fundamentally change.
But what I do think is true is that a lot of people, while there is this knee-jerk reaction to, oh, this is all Manchin's fault, and it's no. Manchin is embracing the role of the rotating villain. He enjoys the spotlight. It's painfully obvious that he does. At the same time, the whole system is just disintegrating around itself, and when you're not getting anything for the people, it's like at some point they're just not going to buy it anymore. Yeah. This idea that it's this one person, and how is it that we have an election year coming up, and while it is going to be a red wave, that doesn't mean that there aren't some vulnerable R's that are out there that you could be leaning on to say, hey, if you want to save your neck, you might want to get on board with this.
They're not leaning on anyone because the truth is they don't really care. And the reason I don't think that he really cares at all is because he hasn't even done the bare minimum of what he could do via executive order. Yeah. He hasn't done crap. And so really, it's not a matter. I mean, you could blame Manchin. He could be the WWF baddie of the week, and it doesn't matter. And I think he is completely a narcissist, so he does like it. But what it really comes down to is that if the president of the United States wanted this done, it would be done. And I am it's like we are all running around like that person is the be all powerful that we have to vote against Trump because he's so scared. But yet we don't think that person has enough power to control what they want. Like, I'm sorry, if the president of the United States wanted that bill passed, it would have been passed. And there are a lot of behind the scenes ways that could happen. And you know it. So, I mean, to me, it's just basic. No.
And a prime example of that is with the infrastructure bill. You had the squad that basically put their foot down and said, look, we're not voting for this until we get Build Back Better through first. And so the Democrats just said, okay, we'll just get a dozen GOPers to come and join us. Right. So when they need the votes, they can always get the votes.
President can do what he wants.
And not only that, but you just had the military budget that just passed, sweeping military budget passed. So when they want bipartisanship, right, when they want something done, they get it.
And I would also say that it's not so hard for the president to push something through that is overwhelmingly popular with the American people. We're not talking about something that isn't mainstream. These are things that most people are very supportive of and just feel they're powerless to help, make happen.
And last point, when Bernie was running for president in 2020, he specifically said, look, if I am the president of the United States and there is a part of the agenda that needs to be passed on behalf of the people, and we've got people standing in the way who are elected representatives, I'm going to go to their state and I'm going to campaign against them. I'm going to rally the people. Joe Biden is not doing anything.
Let's talk about the progressives, because you just mentioned what Bernie said he would do, and earlier said all he did was this op-ed.
Yeah.
And he really came out after Sunday when Manchin was on Fox News. He really came out strong against Manchin, and so did Joe Biden. But even back in 2016, 2015, actually, Bernie, when he announced his run, one of the first fundraisers he did was in LA at some friend's house, and I happened to attend. There were maybe about 100 people there. And I had already started LA for Bernie. And my friend let me get on the stage after Bernie spoke to introduce LA for Bernie to the crowd. And we recruited about 60 members. And I always say that's the first and only time I will ever be on stage with Bernie Sanders. But I remember he had talked about John Boehner, who was the Senate Majority Leader at the time. And one of the questions from the audience was, Bernie, you know that John Boehner is never going to pass Medicare for all. So even if you get elected, how are you going to get him to do it? And he said, well, I'm going to go to his state and I'm going to tell everybody the reason you guys can't have nice things is because of John Boehner. So one of the things that I came to learn about Bernie is that he kind of talks a good game. I mean, not that he doesn't think what he's saying is a good idea, but I think he lacks the capacity to be a real organizer. And he could have mobilized in the same way that we all criticized Obama after he built the largest grassroots movement to get him elected, Organizing for America. Or it was Obama for America, and then it became Organizing for America. He disbanded that group and didn't revive them. In fact, I remember when he wanted to do something unpopular, like pass the TPP, he turned to Organizing for America. And I know a lot of organizers who said, no, I'm not going to support that. I'm against the TPP. But Bernie had a big organization, and then he started Our Revolution. And Our Revolution has been doing some good things. I've been in close contact with Amanda Nichols, who's their new communications person. And so they have been doing a lot of rallies in Manchin's district and Sinema's district and Richie Neal's district, all over the place. They're trying to do these rallies. But I've come to believe, since I've organized over, three dozen protests since Occupy, that you need more than just rallies. There's a famous saying, mobilizing is not organizing. People go to a rally, they post it on social media, they think they've done everything, and then they go home. What you need is door to door, face to face, what they call deep canvassing, to try to get these voters in West Virginia who, voted for Trump by 39 points. That's why Manchin thinks he can do what he's doing. But you also know that Bernie won every single county in the primary there in West Virginia. So he could have made use of that force if he really had anyone who knew how to do this. And that's where I think we need to go with this. We need to have these face-to-face conversations, because just using social media, we are getting so polarized. People only agree with a viewpoint that they've already held. Your opinion is rarely going to get changed by something you see on social media. And we know that the algorithms of social media are only giving you viewpoints that you already agree with anyway.
Confirmation bias.
Yeah. So we're in a very dangerous situation right now in this country. We're extremely polarized, and there's no place anywhere where we can all come together.
I do think that we've talked about this a lot, that statewide initiatives is really where a lot of the change can happen, especially as it relates to healthcare. Medicare for all is not passing on Capitol Hill, but I do think it could be sort of like a Canadian type situation where it passes in a province, or in this case, a state like New York or California, where the momentum is the greatest as it currently stands. There's also whole Washington, got to give it up for their efforts. If we were able to get something like that through, I think that that's how the momentum is going to build for a lot of these policies that we're fighting for. And so I would assume you probably would agree that that is one of the directions that we need to take. But also, what do you think is going to ultimately happen in 24? Because next year is obviously going to be really bad in terms of where the electoral numbers are going to be.
It's going to be an ugly, ugly look for the Dems. I mean, I think it needs to happen, like sort of like pulling off of a Band-Aid, but it's going to be ugly. It's certainly here.
I've always felt that, when you're looking at the infrastructure bill and the fact that a quarter of that money is basically getting earmarked for Buttigieg to decide where it goes, and we all know how that works out.
Yeah.
That's basically political favors out the yin yang. So if they're going to do what they're going to do, which is basically push him to the front along with Kamala in some capacity, what do you see as far as the non-corporate left? Do you see an opening? Because I thought it was going to take at least until 28, but the way things are moving right now, there could very well be an opportunity for somebody to really pick up the reins from where Bernie left off. But who?
Yeah, who? I really don't see anyone really in the wings waiting to pick up that mantle. I do agree with you that it's going to be a bloodbath in 24. 22. The only way that we're going to counter that is if Joe Manchin, and this was discussed, Joe Biden, Freudian slip.
Yeah.
If Joe Biden,
President Manchin,
President Manchin, as I call him that all the time,
yeah.
if he does more things like what he did the other day because of public pressure, which is to extend the student loan
payment, yeah.
right? Because clearly they don't want to, they've extended that a few months out. They're going to keep extending that because they don't want to go into the midterms with everybody being hit with all that student loan. What they should really do is obviously, he can cancel, like Elizabeth Warren's thing is $50,000, but he can cancel all the student debt. $1.7 trillion would be the biggest stimulus ever known in this country. Young people would be able to get married, buy a house, start a family, start a business. And for Lawrence Summers to tweet the other day, I actually cursed at him. He basically said, "Oh, this is a very big mistake," what Joe Biden did, very bad for the economy. So
why would he say? And why would he say that?
Well, I said, the architect of how we got here doesn't get to say what the solutions are, and then I made the point about it being the biggest stimulus. So he doesn't know what he's talking about. So I think that, look, Joe Manchin and Joe Biden are going to talk. They're going to get something passed. The question is it going to be enough to make a noticeable difference in the lives of people, such that they're going to think good things about the Democratic Party? They went big last year in 2020 with the CARES Act, with the HEROES Act, but all those things are sort of ending. And unless they can do something for the American people and promote that they're doing it. See, the Republicans are so good at marketing what they do, even though they do either nothing, like stifling the agenda that would help the American people, or only doing something that helps, the 1% and corporations. But somehow they twisted in an Orwellian fashion with their, think tanks and their AstroTurf groups. We need to get more of that. We need to organize. Like the article that I sent you today in the the New York Times that I wanted to discuss was about how they organized against the mask mandates in Enid, Oklahoma. And there was an African-American city councilman who proposed it. And this whole article was an anatomy on how this one woman who was, evangelical, homeschool mom, totally apolitical, organized her community to fight this, to the point where this African-American city councilman is now thinking he can't even live in his own city anymore. He's looking for jobs outside of the city because it was so polarizing. And then I just read another similar article about how a community in Michigan was mobilized to vote against, a wind farm, and how they use social media and how they use, and it's all like, basically they said, and I just highlighted a couple of things, social scientists who study conflict say the only way to understand it and begin to get out of it is to look at the powerful currents of human emotions that are the real drivers. They include the fear of not belonging, the sting of humiliation, a sense of threat, real or perceived, and the strong pull of group behavior. And I think this is so key to understanding what's going on in our country, whether it's vaccine mandates, mask mandates, critical race theory, environmental issues. And then like David Sirota's movie, Don't Look Up, which is an allegory on climate change. This comet is about to hit the earth and, they're trying to do something about it. And the media only wants to trivialize it. And the politicians only want to see how it could be used for, the midterms. And this is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with institutions that are supposed to be looking out for us, who are not. They're only looking out for themselves, their reelection, their bottom line. And the citizens are kind of left to organize themselves. And what happens in this bifurcated media environment is you got the right wing seems to be doing a better job than the left wing, because the left wing is divided by identity politics, in my opinion.
Exactly. They don't fall in line. They don't come together. They sit there and nitpick and judge every little thing, and they just cannot see the forest through the trees. It's pathetic, and that's why they lose.
And then you also have, a friend of the show, Andrew Yang, who said, look, progressives could agree with me on 20 issues, but if they disagree on the 21st issue, that's it, you're finished.
Yeah.
And that is a very big part of the problem when
and
it
it's
comes.
often small little things that just hurt their feelings.
Well,
that's the other thing,
and
is they tend to go with what feels good to them and their feelings and political correctness, and not what actually would work. Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.